On Saturday, you told us your doctrine is strength and achieving peace through strength.
Right.
After Helsinki, Lindsey Graham said you showed weakness.
Well, Lindsey Graham, you're going to have to...
was the most serious mistake of your presidency.
I totally disagree. I think I did great at the news conference. I think it was a strong news conference. You have people that said you should have gone up to him, you should have walked up and started screaming in his face. We're living in the real world, okay?
Hello, welcome to Media Roots Radio. This is Robbie Martin.
And this is Abby Martin.
Welcome, everybody.
We basically just wanted to do an entire podcast based on the new indictments about the Russians that allegedly hacked into the DNC, et cetera, et cetera. So my brother did a shitload of research that we're just going to go through, and it's been kind of disappointing to see the coverage, frankly.
This indictment came 2 days before this Helsinki summit that was, the media was already screaming about and having a fit about because Trump was going to have a private, something like hour-long meeting with Putin at it. And this Helsinki summit came about a week after Trump going to NATO and insulting apparently the whole NATO body and freaking out all of the pundit and think tank class again by saying that NATO needs to pay, which is something he's been saying like the entire time. So this all happened very quickly. It was almost like the NATO thing happened. Everybody freaked out. Then the indictment came 2 days before this like heavily feared, talked about summit. And then things just exploded in a way that I have not seen, Abby, since probably right after 9/11. Like in terms of the media's hysterical tone and the way they were reacting to it, I've not seen something like this in a very long time. And it was
throwing around the word treason every other post and headline.
It was
it's
frightening.
Unbelievable.
I felt like I was in a heightened state, almost in a similar way to like when you're being bombarded with propaganda where you like feel that something is happening and it just puts you almost like in an altered state. It was one of the most extreme 2-day TV news periods I've witnessed in years and years.
I think that Trump really admires Putin for the same reason he admires Duterte and for the same reason he admires Netanyahu. He likes that kind of more authoritarian strongman. And so just for that reason alone, I think he just loves Putin just because he reminds him of himself maybe, and he just wanted to just have a meeting with him without listening to people, perhaps. And also when you look at Trump compared to Obama, which we've done several times, I mean, Obama refused to send lethal arms to Ukraine. President Trump has. Obama refused to bomb Syria like Trump did. And also Trump expelled all these Russian diplomats and sanctioned more Russian oligarchs than Obama did. So it just doesn't make sense when you're like, oh, Trump hasn't done anything against Russia. But in terms of the summit, it does seem like he was stepping out just as he did with North Korea and kind of going against the grain. Again, that independent streak. Yeah. That is his only attribute that's like somewhat good.
Yeah, it's like the wild card aspect of him being president is the only good thing about it, because it does seem like when it comes down to certain issues that his ego is really attached to, let's just say the good issues like North Korea and having talks with Russia directly, he's determined to do that for his own ego satisfaction. I do think that's making a lot of people really nervous and upset right now, because I would argue that even like John Bolton and these other people in the administration were extremely disappointed and just shocked at how he treated that summit. Following the Helsinki press conference, Trump's first 2 interviews that he stacked up, he gave an exclusive interview to Sean Hannity and then another one to Tucker Carlson, of course. And then after that, he got interviewed by 2 other reporters, one for CBS News and another for CNBC, who I frankly have never heard of. And I'm wondering if when he gets interviewed on any other news network that's not friendly to him, he just has a checklist of all the people he's not willing to do an interview with. And then he just picks like a random person who maybe doesn't have any history of hostility towards him. So first I wanted to play you a clip from the Sean Hannity interview, because it's hilarious just the way that the interview opens. Sean Hannity says, "You came out strong during the press conference." by talking about Hillary's emails and asking, where's the server?
A lot came up. You were very strong at the end of that press conference. You said, where are the servers? What about what Peter Strzok said? Where are the 33,000 emails? And there was this mystery answer that I think surprised a lot of people by the president of Russia as it relates to the Mueller investigation.
That's right. Well, first of all, he said there was no collusion whatsoever. I guess he said as strongly as you can say it, they have no information on Trump. And one thing you know, if they had it, it would have been out.
Just from an optics standpoint, I mean, even if you agree with Trump, he really flubbed that. I mean, you can't talk about someone else's crimes as a way to deflect away from crimes that are alleged against you. I mean, even though I don't think Trump is guilty of collusion, it looks really bad, I think, where he constantly brings up Hillary's emails, talks about how unfair it is. It's just not a good strategy at all. So it's just funny to hear Sean Hannity. Virtually everyone else on Fox News thought that he at least really flubbed it.
He said it was nonsense.
He said it's nonsense, is right. And he also said there's absolutely no collusion, which you know, and everybody that watches your show knows. And I think most of the country knows, and Tucker standing right over there definitely knows, because he gets it. He's one of the people that get it. We get questions on the witch hunt. And I don't think the people out in the country buy it, but the reporters like to give it a shot. I thought that President Putin was very, very strong.
So the one true thing that Trump does hone in on in his answer is that he says the country understands because based on the polling that we just read, the country doesn't care, generally speaking, about this Russia issue. It's very low on the list of priorities. And he's also partly referring to the fact that his base doesn't care at all. Even if they conceded on the point that Russia hacked the DNC, it doesn't matter to them. But then again, he reiterates and doubles down on the fact that Putin came out very strong in his denials. Trump tries to reiterate the point here with Hannity that the meeting between them face-to-face drastically improved their relations extremely quickly. And Trump describes it as a wedge that's trying to drive them apart.
Well, I think we're doing really well with Russia as of today. I thought we were doing horribly before today. Really, I mean horribly, dangerously.
It was that big, that dramatic today.
Oh, I think it was great today, but I think it was really bad 5 hours ago. I think we really had a potential problem. And we've had a phony witch hunt deal drive us apart.
This is the biggest wedge. This was the biggest wedge.
It's the thing that he told me when he went in. He said, what a shame. He felt it was very hard for me to make a deal because of, all of this nonsense in much of the case.
He used the word nonsense.
But he can't help himself in the second part of the answer that he gives and just sort of rambling on and on incoherently about how Paul Manafort's a really nice guy. It's just a strange, nonsensical deflection, random rant he goes on.
Then they have 12 people. These aren't 12 people involved in the campaign. Then you had many other people. Some told a lie. You look at Flynn, it's a shame. But the FBI didn't think he was lying. With Paul Manafort, who really is a nice man, you look at what's going on with him, it's like Al Capone.
I just think this illustrates that Trump is not articulate enough, and ultimately he just doesn't seem to care about making genuinely coherent arguments. He's more interested in sort of like the tabloid, the clickbait, the red meat, the base. Trump at this point wasn't trying to change his rhetoric from the summit or do damage control at all, because Hannity says, what do you think of Putin's idea to invite Mueller over to Russia to have these people come over there and talk to Putin? And Trump is just like, oh, I thought it was fascinating. I thought it was a great idea, but I don't think they'll want to do it. It's in a sort of a rare moment where Trump actually sounds really pouty and sad, where he reveals that about himself. Just listen to the way he responds here.
Did you like President Putin's idea? Robert Mueller should go talk to him. Because
I was fascinated by it. And his prosecutors would prosecute it, and he said that Robert Mueller's people could go with them, but they probably won't want to.
Yeah, interesting.
After this one aired, Fox News waited a day to air the Tucker Carlson interview, and by the next day, the fallout was so intense from the Helsinki summit that Trump felt, apparently, that he needed to do a press conference in the White House. So he invited the press out there, in my mind, it almost seemed like trolling because he said that he misspoke. He read through the transcript, and now he understands why some of the press is upset.
I came back and I said, what is going on? What's the big deal? So I got a transcript, I reviewed it. I actually went out and reviewed a clip of an answer that I gave. And I realized that there is a need for some clarification. It should have been obvious. I thought it would be obvious, but I would like to clarify just in case it wasn't. In a key sentence in my remarks, I said the word would instead of wouldn't. The sentence should have been, I don't see any reason why I wouldn't or why it wouldn't be Russia. So just to repeat it, I said the word would instead of wouldn't.
Which is hilarious because that's really not even what the press was so upset about at all, or what people are freaking out about. And while he's saying this, the lights mysteriously flicker off in the White House, and then he says, must be the intelligence agencies.
I have a full faith in our intelligence agencies. Whoops, they just turned off the light. That must be the intelligence agencies. There it goes. Okay. You guys okay? Good. That was strange.
If this is damage control, it was hilarious, borderline trolling damage control. But in the following days, he attempted to do more. And I'll explain in a second. But first, I wanted to play you some clips from this Tucker Carlson interview with him, because it just shows you how off script he goes and how, first right out of the gates, instead of talking about how Putin's a bad guy or how he thinks Putin should be punished for doing things, he lays into John Brennan so hard where you could tell he just personally has a fiery hatred for the guy. Listen to this.
The reaction to your press conference in Washington was swift and intense. Former CIA Director John Brennan described it as treasonous and a potentially impeachable offense.
Well, I think Brennan's a very bad guy, and if you look at it, a lot of things happened under his watch. I think he's a very bad person.
And if that wasn't bad enough, the optics of doing that right after the Helsinki summit, Trump continued to bash NATO. I think at this point he kind of likes sticking it to these people who freak out at his NATO comments. Listen to exactly how he responds to Tucker.
NATO obligates the members to defend any other member that's attacked. So let's say Montenegro, which joined last year, is attacked. Right. Why should my son go to Montenegro to defend it from attack? Why is that? I understand what you're saying. I've asked the same question. You know, Montenegro is a tiny country with very strong people. They may get aggressive, and congratulations, you're in World War III.
So after this, there was still plenty of fallout raining down. Trump's reversal and attempt to do damage control by saying he meant the word wouldn't instead of would became a laughingstock. It was enough for people like Newt Gingrich and a lot of Republicans who were looking for the chance to immediately jump back on ship. Trump's own people, I believe, and based on some of the news headlines coming out, seem to be putting even more pressure on him internally to get him to say stronger things about the hacking and about Putin. And there was a CBS News interview aired. So the summit was on Monday. This interview aired on Wednesday. And of course, CBS News went ahead with the headline right when they dropped the interview clip saying, Trump, for the first time ever, blames Putin.
Mr. Trump, for the first time in public as president, blamed Vladimir Putin directly for meddling in the 2016 U.S. election.
But if you actually watch the interview, Trump knows how to handle the press extremely well still. And he's able to sort of not really blame Putin, but just throw out lip service to say that he blames Putin at the same time. And he's barely even trying even here. Keep in mind, this is 2 days later. This is his attempt to do damage control. And you know damn well that people were, from underneath of him in his own administration, were like, you have to say something blaming Putin. You have to at this point. But notice how he weasels out of it, sort of.
But you haven't condemned Putin specifically. Do you hold him personally responsible?
Well, I would, because he's in charge of the country, just like I consider myself to be responsible for things that happen in this country. So certainly, as the leader of a country, you would have to hold him responsible, yes.
What'd you say to him?
Very strong on the fact that we can't have meddling, we can't have any of that. Now, look, we're also living in a grown-up world, but I let him know we can't have this, we're not going to have it. and that's the way it's going to be.
But he denies it. So if you believe U.S. intelligence agencies, is Putin lying to you?
I don't want to get into whether or not he's lying. I can only say that I do have confidence in our intelligence agencies as currently constituted.
And his attempts to do damage control, even after this, were milquetoast at best. But at this point, he has tilted enough where he's thrown them a little bone. So all the Republicans don't have to jump ship yet, and everybody can stop freaking out just a little bit. And that's all it seems like he's going to give them.
So wrap it up with what you think that we didn't, or maybe just kind of conclude your findings and give kind of a last minute analysis, and of course cover anything else that you feel like you didn't.
Sure. I think one of the main things I concluded from this is, to me, it has really shown that as awful as Trump is and as racist and horrible as he is on so many things, one of the things that I still continue to be fascinated by, and at this moment I'm more fascinated now than I ever have been since he's become president, is that he appears to not listen to anybody in these certain crucial moments that are so important to like the way things are done in the American government or American diplomacy, that it just seems like he is operating purely egoistically to a point that actually does make him dangerous to certain people in the establishment. Only for that reason alone, it's very interesting to watch something like this play out. And it's also scary to watch the media ratchet up the rhetoric to the point of actually making Trump look like the more sane one in the equation in this specific dynamic. And that's dangerous to be doing also because Trump is so dangerous in other ways. There's important things to be criticizing him for. And yet, to get this hysterical about him saying he believes Putin's denial, it looks crazy. It's an insane thing to do, but to act like it's the end of the world, I mean, the media loses a ton of legitimacy when they do that. And it just makes this fake news thing that Trump always likes to lean on more powerful. It helps Trump. Just all this shit just seems to help him. And if the real goal is to take him down because he's a fascist, which I believe he definitely has fascist tendencies, I mean, if that's the goal, then everybody needs to think of a new strategy who's fixated on this Russia shit.